All right, hi guys, this is Bob Horn, and I'd like to show you a simple example of JavaScript and CSS combined to make a box grow and have text show up, slide onto it, and then clicking it again and having it go back to the way it was. And so if we get right to it, you can see the box on my screen. If I click it, it'll grow, and you can see the text slide in from one side and then the text on the bottom slide in from the other side. And if we click it again, it'll go back to the way it was. The text slides off and it goes back down. So one more time, let's click it, and you'll see the text slide in from the top and the bottom, and click it again, and it goes back to the way it was. And I just wanted to share, there are a few pretty cool things that make this work in a simple and slick way. To give you an idea, just open the editor here. I have a file that really all it is, we've got our header here, we've got some styles embedded within the file, and we'll look at this in a little more detail here in a minute. We have a box that shows up on our screen, line 52 here, and then we have our JavaScript that makes all the magic happen, line 58 through 71, right? So all I did was go to Safari, File, Open, and open that file on my system. And I have it loaded here within Safari. You can see if I scroll through here, we can see this is the file I just showed you in the debugger. And what I want to do is show how this code makes this happen. And so if I set, well, first of all, let's look at our box. We have a div with a class of box, and in it, we have a header that has my name in it, and then we have a paragraph that has my Twitter handle in it. And you can see that those don't show up in the box right now. And the reason for that, if we look at the H2 within the box, so let's scroll up at our style and look at box H2, we can see here that we have a transform. We have translate x, which is the x-axis of negative 200%. So as it stands now, since we have this style applied to it, negative 200% gets the header, the H2, off of the box by sliding it 200% of the way to the left, right? And then so if we look at the paragraph, why doesn't that show up on the box? Well, if we look at the P within the box, so we have our box and paragraph here, it also has a translate X. But it's a positive 200%, which slides the text off to the right. So that's why when we click the box, you can see one slide in from the left and one slide in from the right. And it starts off of the box. And then after, and when we click, we'll see that we apply this open style to it, and this translate X takes it back to 0%, meaning forget the negative 200 and positive 200 we applied, make them 0%, which shows them in the original location, right? And so the way that this happens, let's get it back to our starting position. We're going to set 2 breakpoints here, and we're going to run through the code. Line 60, well, first of all, line 59 just selects our box on the screen. So document.query selector, and we're looking for .box. And so we have our box style here, which means we're selecting this, okay? And then to that div element, we're adding an event listener for click. So whenever we click it, this function happens, right? So let's click it, and we're going to step through this now. And we can see that the first thing we do is we set 2 variables, a first and a second, line 61 and 62. And if we look at our local variables here, they're undefined because we haven't hit them yet. So let's step through those 2 lines. We're going to hit those 2, and we can see that the first variable is set to opening, and the second is set to open. And those correspond to styles in our document. So if we go look at opening, we can just see here that, well, first of all, let's look at box. It's set to 50 by 50 pixels. And then when we apply the opening style, our box is going to change so that it's now 500 by 500, so the box is going to grow. So that's what happens when we apply our opening style, okay? And then our second style that we're going to apply is open, and what that does is it removes the translate X, or changes it from 200 to 0, which will put the text back within the box, okay? And we'll talk about line 63 here in a second, but we can see this class list contains first. We want to know if our box has the first style applied, and first is opening. And what we can do is document.query selector. We just want to see box, right? So if we do that, we can see that there's our element. But what we want to do is see the class list. And we can see here that it's a length of 1 and has a value of box. So the styles applied to our box so far, there's just one, box. So if we look up here, the only thing applied to this box right now is this style here, which is why it's 50 by 50. All right, and so we're saying if this is box, class list are the classes, the styles applied to it. Get out of there. If it contains first, which is opening, and it doesn't, then we do something. But we're not going to worry about it now, so let's step through that because that doesn't apply at the moment. So we get to line 66, and we can say, okay, now this, which is box, so box.classList, toggle first. So since first isn't applied to box at the moment, this will apply it. So remember, first is opening. Let's go look at opening. It's just going to change it to 500 by 500. So if we step through this line of code here on 66, our box changes to 500 by 500. And then we get to the set timeout function. And the way that works is, you can see line 69 has 500 milliseconds right there. So this set timeout function basically means after 500 milliseconds, or half a second, what we're going to do is this.classList.toggle second. Remember, this is box. The class list, we're going to toggle second. So since second is open, and it's not currently applied, it is not one of the classes within the box, it's going to be made so by doing the toggle. And if we look down here one more time at our class list on box, now we have 2, and the value is box and opening. So box and opening are applied. Now we're going to apply open. And we can see, remember open, it takes our translate X back to 0. Instead of 200 and the text being off the box, we're going to take it to 0. It means there's no transformation here, and the text will show up as it should. So if we let this run, okay, after a half a second, we got to line 68. So now we're going to add a second variable, which is our open class. Let's run that, and we can see the transformation is set to 0, and it looks like that. And if we look at our class list now, instead of 2, it's a length of 3. Whoops. And it has a value of box, opening, and open. So since all 3 styles are applied, it looks like this now. And then if we do the reverse, if we click the box again, it's going to go back to, we need to stop. We're paused in the debugger now. Let's let that run. So if we click the box again, we hit our code, and we can see that our variables are undefined again. So we're just going to go ahead and step through that. Now they're opening and open like they should be, but now we have to do the reverse. We have to go backwards from what we did before. So if our class list contains first, which is opening, so if our box has a class of opening applied to it, and if we look down here just so that we get the most recent, we can see that there are 3 styles applied, box, opening, and open. So if our class list contains opening, and it does, we're going to swap first and second so that we can go in the reverse order. So that means first, which is opening, is going to be assigned second, which is open. And then second, which is open, is going to be assigned first. So this is just a neat little trick to swap these variables. So if I go ahead and step through this, you can see that first and second are opening and open right now. So if I just step through that line, right now they'll switch to open and opening. Okay, so this just allows us to go in reverse order. So line 66 here, we're going to toggle first. First is now open, so we're going to take the open style away, which is our translation. So if we're going to remove translate x of 0%, we're going to jump back to the way we were before of -200 and 200. Okay, so let's step through that line of code. We remove the transform, and those are off the screen now. And after a half a second, so I'm going to hit run right now. And then after a half a second, we're going to do this line, which means we're going to toggle second, which is opening. And since opening is applied to this, here, let's show it, the most recent again. Our box class list has two of them, box and opening. And then we're going to toggle opening, which means we're going to remove it in this case. And opening made the box 500 by 500. So when we toggle that and remove it, we're going to jump back to just being 50 by 50. Okay, so let's just run that line of code, and we're back to normal. And that's the way that works. Hopefully that was helpful.